So, in part 1, we're going to run over how to ask your computer basic questions and see what's wrong with it. I'm going to take the view here that all computers have 3 basic parts, only 3 parts which are important. Number 1 is the CPU, that's the central processing unit, and it's the computing bit of the computer. It's the bit of the computer that actually does the computing. However, once it's done with the computing, it dumps out the calculation that has nowhere to go. So after that, we're going to look at RAM, the bit where the computing things are remembered. But that's fairly short-term memory. Of course, it's random access memory. And then finally, the disk. So we'll learn how to monitor these things, mostly by querying them as we go along. Okay, so first thing to look at, the CPU. And the most popular way to do that, or at least the default way to do that, is top. That is, you want to see the top processes. So remember, the CPU is the thinky bit of the machine. So if you've got a program that's going to run, that's going to do something, that's going to go into the CPU. So let's have a look at top. So we type in top. If you want to get out of there, it's Q to quit, just like with so many Linux programs. And top again. There we are. It's a little boring. It's a little colorless. So I'm just going to do a quick Z. Oh, now we got some color. What other options do we have? Shift Z. We've got a few things there. Yeah, let's go with green. I quite like green. Okay, we got a lot of information here. I think, in fact, we have a bit too much information. I don't want to see everything which is... I don't want to see these things which are idle, which are just sort of spinning around. I want to see the active processes, like what's happening right now. So I'm going to do top space dash I. There we are. Cinnamon, that's the name of the desktop on this computer. Not the one I'm on right now, but the one I'm showing you. And K-Worker, unsure about that one. applet, so that's a network manager applet. Apparently that's doing something at the moment. So these numbers here, let's go through them. 1.3, that means this is taking up 1 CPU core and 0.3 of another. 0.7, that means it's taking up 70% of 1 CPU core. This machine has, I believe, 4 cores. So with 4 cores, like the most a processor could take up would be 4, which is to say all 4 cores. And if it's taking up 2, that means it's taking up 2 out of the 4 cores. Let's see the CPU visualized. Press T, and we have this up here. So apparently, it's not very active. We can get a bit more information here, and we can get a bit more color. So let's try another very popular CPU monitoring tool, or a general monitoring tool, actually. I'm going to do, if you're on Arch, you can do sudo pacman -s htop, of course. But here, since this is a Debian-based machine, it's not Debian, but it's based on Debian. If you run anything based on Debian, you'll be fine. Sudo apt install htop. So down it comes from the package manager, unpacking, building. Then we're going to see the same kind of thing with a little more color and a little bit more information. There we are, it's in. So htop. This is nice because we can confirm we have 4 CPU cores, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes you'll see them numbered 0, 1, 2, 3, because computers it's often easier to number things that way with computers. We'll leave swapping memory and such for later. Right now, just focus on this. So you can see this machine is, think of it as not stressed. If these numbers ever jump up, the machine is kind of stressed. Now, as you'll probably have noticed, everything's changing all the time. We could pause this, but that would make the information fairly useless, because it wouldn't be true anymore. So instead of looking at what the CPU is doing, because it is jumping up and down all the time, we mostly focus on these numbers. This is a 1 minute average. So taken on average over the last 1 minute, this is using 0.15 cores, which is to say 15% of a single core. Looks like it's fairly active now. The next number is a 5 minute average, and then 15-minute average. So just think of them as like right now, longer term, and long term. So if this thing is really high, that means the machine is processing an awful lot, it's a bit stressed out, and it may reach the limits of its ability and then start to slow down. If it's anything below full usage, then often the machine will actually be able to continue working at full pace, no problems. So open up top on your own machine, have a look at what's running, and you can even attempt, let's say you find something you don't like. At this point, you can even say kill. See, what can we kill that won't completely break this machine? NM applet, probably useless. Gonna press K to kill, and then got a whole bunch of different ways of killing something. We can say, please die, politely. There's also sig hup here, that's a sort of just rip the processor's throat out and leave it dying on the floor instantly. We're gonna go with sig term, that's the default. And yep, it's not there anymore. So there are CPU processes. If one is annoying you, you can kill it. And again, the important thing to note here is the load averages. So, bon appetit, and I will see you for the next one. So, for part 2, we're going to go with memory. So this is what the computer is remembering at the time. It's a little like your own short-term memory when you're going around the house and doing something. You have a number of things in your head, and if you get too many things in your head, you can kind of go like, what's happening? And in computing terms, that is the blue screen of death you'll see on Windows. You get a similar thing with Linux, although it's handled very differently here. The computer tends to freeze up for a long time and then actually starts working after a while. But anyway, we're gonna look at a couple of the details on how to measure it. Let's start with top. So if you press Z, we can get some color back. And if you press M, we can see the memory usage. So it's just a straightforward graph. Adds a little bit of the memory. There's more. It could use more, and it's not. If the memory is full, it's not like a full CPU. Like it's not really stressing the machine. You won't find it slowing down so much. But this is just not quite enough information here. So you can press Q to get out of there, and then back to everyone's favorite monitoring tool, HTOP. Huzzah! Right now we're looking at the CPU, and the top thing taking up the CPU there is the network manager. But we don't care about the CPU, so press Shift M, sorry, to go to the memory. And if you want to go back, that's Shift P for the processes, Shift M for the memory. And here we have it. There are the top processes taking up like the most amount of memory. So again, we're looking in terms of percentages. And here, that's an awful lot of cinnamon. In fact, it's an awful lot of repetition because all these processes are doing different things, so they need like different threads. So these are like different bits in the CPU doing the job. But that's a little bit too much. We don't care about all those things. So I'm going to press T, or of course you can press F5, as it says down below. You can see this. And we're going to see what this is like. Let me just zoom out a little bit. There we are, much better. So we have a Mint report tray, since this is running Linux Mint, or at least the machine I'm SSH'd into. We have all these things, and you can see the percentage of memory. So 1% there, 0.7% there, etc., etc. And of course the user on the side. So that's running an Apache server, which we'll get into later. Now, if we escape out of there, hopefully you've got the. Oh, hang on a minute. I forgot about the very important this line here. So this says 774 megs out of 6.72 gigs. So this machine basically has 8 gigabytes, but a number is quite a bit actually. It's taken up by the system itself, like just to start it. So that's reserved memory. Don't worry about that. But you notice this thing looks like it's taking up almost a third, which should be more like 2 gigabytes. So the reason for that is some of this stuff is cached. And instead of explaining, let me show you caching. So we're going to leave that machine, and I'm going to open up htop on this current machine which I'm on. Then I'm going to open a massive program, GIMP. Actually, let's do this. Let's be scientific about this. I'm going to type in time and see how long it takes GIMP to open. Taking a while, it's loading up, getting some themes. There we are. Exit. So after GIMP has opened up, we see how long it took. So apparently that was 5 seconds. 5 seconds of real time. We got some other numbers. We're not going to worry about them right now. Now we're going to try the same thing. GIMP's going to open, bang, bang, and we close it. 3 seconds, 3.92. It's a little bit faster this time. If we open it again, it should say the same result, roughly speaking. Yep, 3.85 seconds. Okay, so why the speed increase? Well, the speed increase comes from the fact that when this full program is loaded off of the disk up into the memory, I always picture it above, though of course physically they just sit beside each other, but when it's pulled from the disk, loaded into memory, the computer won't just sort of discard it once it's gone. So if you open up Firefox the very first time you do that on your computer, it takes a while, it's kind of irritating. And then the next time, bang, instant Firefox. And the reason you get instant Firefox is that the computer is not pulling everything off the disk a second time. When you exit it, it just stays in memory. And the computer marks that that memory is totally free and available, and we have the option of using it if we need it, but if we don't need it, then we'll just leave the old stuff in there. And as soon as somebody asks for GIMP or Firefox or anything else which is large, it can just be pulled straight from this cache. So that is what this yellow line bit is for. That will have gone up a bit when GIMP opened. Because GIMP is there and it's remaining in memory. However, only 1.2 is actually used up. Okay, let's see this with a bit of a breakdown. We're going to go with command free, as in how much of the memory is free. That is a really ugly way to look at things. So I'm going to try that again and look at the manual bit and see if there's a more human option. There is, it's -- human. So we're going to try, clear the screen and then do free -- human. So that's much better. The total memory in the system is 7.6 gigs. Right now, what's really properly being used up is 1.2. And this memory is 4.1. Now that looks like it's wrong, because if this memory is free, 4 plus 1, that'd be 5.3 gigabytes in total. But the total is not 5.3, it's 7.6. So what's happening there? Well, the additional stuff is the the cache. So some items are buffered. So even though that's free, there's much more that's available, because we could take this if we wanted to. So one last note on memory, just swap. You probably noticed this down here. And this harkens back to our blue screen of death problem. Let's say you need to remember, computer needs to remember 5 gigabytes of information, but it only has 4 gigabytes of actual memory. In the old days, the computer would simply die. It would fall over. Nowadays, it takes the stuff that it's not really using. It doesn't need to remember it, but it doesn't need to remember it right now. And it writes that onto the disk in a special file called the swap file, or even like a full partition. So it writes that onto the disk and then loads the new stuff. This is very slow. It grinds your disk away. It's not very good, but it's better than the blue screen of death option. You can see the same thing if we do htop. Here we have 0 kilobytes used of the swap, because the computer wants not to use it wherever possible, but 8 gigabytes potential swap. So that's how memory works. Pull open your own top, pull open your own htop, have a look around, and yeah, see what's taking up the memory on your computer. So, this last section, we're going to look at disk usage. There's a few commands, but in theory, this should be the easiest of the sections. At least I always found it straightforward. You got a file has the size. That's basically the end of it. Well, not quite. Let's actually take a top level view. So I'm on a machine here with a complex disk setup. We're going to start off with list the block devices. That's LSBLK. So, listing out the block devices, we can see we got a solid disk A, got a solid disk B, C, D, E, and F. These things appear to be empty and nowhere. We're going to ignore them. STG1 has one part. So you can see in the type here, this is an actual disk, like it's a physical thing you'll see inside a machine. And disks are divided into parts. It needs at least one part in order to store the files on your system. So there's solid disk A, and we can see the mount point. This is mounted at mount. That's in var. That's where all my lovely Linux ISOs get downloaded to. And we have down here the root partition. So it's not at root something, it's just at the root of the hard disk itself. Okay. Now, for memory, you've seen the free command. Let's look at the disk free command to see how much of the disk is free. That's an awful lot of nonsense again. All these sizes are listed in kilobytes. Great for scripting, not so great for us. So, going to do the same thing as always, -- human readable. Or for short, you can just do -h. It's much better. You can see the sizes, and oh my god, I have 91% used. That's not good, only 22 gigabytes available on the root directory. We also have a run directory, which is on the disk, but it's different. It's a sort of virtual file system. And those devices, while you can see them on the file system to make it easier for you to see them as a file, they're not really on the disk. We got an awful lot of useless information here. I'm going to add in -t, and then I can specify what type of disk I want to see. It's not really useful to see that dev is using 0% because those are virtual files. They're not really files. So, all my file systems are ext4. If you don't know what your file system is, it's ext4. Everyone uses ext4 except for people with particular needs who are happy to set up all the other stuff. Don't worry about it. The type here, ext4. Okay, looking only at those ones, that's much easier to read now. So we've got down to just the information that we want to see. And that makes things much more pleasant to read. Now, we can see the disk usage, we can monitor the disk usage of any given disk, but what about the individual files? How about we go into the root directory? If we try that here, it's going to take far too long to measure because I have too much in there. So I'm going to exit there and go into the local computer that you see in front of you. I'm going to change directory to the root. We have an ls, and we can do a disk usage on, let's say, the boot. Okay, again, that's size is listed in kilobytes. I understand 148. I'm not comfortable with 10,384 kilobytes. So I'm going to add the -h for human. It's better, but it's telling me a load of different things for grub. I think I'd prefer a shorter summary. So you can add -s for short. And there we are, 90 megs. You can also do, if you don't want to see boot itself, you can say everything in boot, and then summarize the lot with a -c. That's useful if you want to look at multiple directories and you just want overall total. So our total for looking at everything in boot is 90 megabytes. We don't have grub divided, and it's easy to read everything. Well, that looks like a normal boot directory to me. So I'm going to see what on earth is taking up all the space. I'm going to do the same thing here, but we're going to delete boot and say disk use and everything, and this will not work because we have a permission denied. Disk usage cannot read the directory. That's owned by the root, not by you, as in not by the normal user. So we don't need to switch over to the root, that you can if you want. Instead, we can just do sudo disk usage root everything, make it human, make it short, give us a summary. Now we're still going to get a couple of errors here because the proc directory, that's the theoretical place where the computer pretends that a process, like any program running, the computer pretends that those are files. Those are not really files. It's just there so we can cd into proc. We'll look at the process IDs. So if we say like, let's see, I'm running OBS. So if I say process grep OBS, that's where it is. So we can do change directory into 21219, and we can look at this process as if it were a file. Cat arch status. That's mem. Oh, I'm gonna have to do sudo. There we are. Oh, it's not happy with that. Okay. Yeah, don't worry about process too much. The point is that even though these look like files and they look like they're on the disk, they're not on the disk. It's just there so you can wander around this place as if it were a regular directory. And as you can see, it's really not. Most of these files, if they're doing anything, are just saying like that they exist in order to indicate something else. So, let's change directory back to the root. Now, if we rerun that command, and there we are, we've got two outputs from here. We can take number 1, that's the normal output, put it into dev null. That will show us only the errors, nothing more. So output number 1 is standard output. If we find number 1, replace that with 2, we can take the errors and push those into dev null. Dev null is a kind of theoretical device. It's just kind of bin. It means I don't want to see it, put it in there. The file will always read a 0. If you cat out dev null to see what's in there, it'll show you nothing because there's nothing there. It is the abyss of nothingness. So we put the errors in there. Now we've got a nice readable format here. That's good. We can see that one thing taking up space is var. One thing taking up space is user. The rest is less easy to read. 28 gigs I feel should come at the end. This is not properly sorted. We could sort this, but that's not going to work either. It's just going to sort by the numbers it sees in front of it. It won't respect gigabytes or megabytes. So we're going to have to tell sorts that this is meant to be human readable input. And finally, come on, there we are. Finally, we have something easy to look at. Total on this disk is 49 gigabytes. Home is taking up 28. Var is taking up 13. So if you want to know why your disk is full, one way to do this is just to progressively sort through the largest folders and see what's on there. Why are they big? What's happening? That's much quicker now. Biggest bit in var is the cache. Let's see what's in the cache. So again, that's sudo disk usage in var cache everything, and we can simplify this a little bit. We can just say we can add these flags together, put any errors into dev null. Don't need to actually. They're not annoying you. Then sort human. Okay, biggest thing here is the swap file, and that makes sense. This isn't a program which is doing anything. It's not like some horrible program has dumped too much logs in here. Instead, it's just the swap file that we mentioned last time. So if you look at htop, it's got 8 gigs of swap for the memory. So with this method, you can continue down and down into your system and get a rough idea of what's taking up the disk. You can get a summary of how well your disk is doing, and the most important thing about these commands is not just the individual bit, because that's an awful lot of work to type in disk usage and see one file and then do it again with a different file. There are far too many files to do this for your system. So instead, the best way is to put things together, pipe them together, put the output here and tell another program to read it, and then tell the computer how to give you the information you want so you can make an easy and intelligent decision. So, bon appetit. That's this section covered. And that ends our section on monitoring. Should at the moment be fairly comfortable with all the cores in your computer, seeing what they're doing, looking at the averages rather than trying to look at the individual ups and downs of those spikes. Looking at how much of your RAM is free, both understanding htop and looking at things in the terminal. And of course, looking at the disk, both from the point of view of the full hard disk and intelligently sorting and parsing individual files. So, bon appetit, and I will see you for the next one.